My dad sent me dozens of texts calling me a burden and telling me you're dead to me after I blocked him for good. When I asked him why he was doing this, he whispered, "Because you owe me everything." I didn't reply. That was 9 months ago. Yesterday, he was escorted out of court in handcuffs. My dad sent me dozens of texts calling me a burden and telling me you're dead to me after I blocked him for good. When I asked him why he was doing this, he whispered, "Because you owe me everything." I didn't reply. That was 9 months ago. Yesterday, he was escorted out of court in handcuffs. Growing up, my parents didn't have many rules, but to my dad, there was one that stood out from the rest: family loyalty. He said it was the only thing that mattered to him. So I spent my entire childhood trying to prove it mattered to me too. I hated football, but still played and even memorized his favorite football team. And whenever the topic of anything remotely related to family came up in school, I would volunteer the information that my dad's amazing and no one else can compare. And of course, I never complained to him about anything. Even when we'd play fight a little too hard and he left me with bruises, or when I heard him shouting at my mom over nothing. Because if I did one thing wrong, he'd go cold. Give me the silent treatment. Something I tried to avoid at all costs. Luckily, my mom didn't have that problem. So when I turned 15, they divorced. My dad seemed so genuinely heartbroken. He even gave me a chain with a broken heart on it, and said it was a reminder to be the man of the house for him. Well, I kept my promise, especially when my mom started seeing someone else. The plan was simple: scare my new stepdad away. Whenever he cleaned the house, I would trash it right after. Whenever he drove me to school, I'd blare the most sexual songs I knew. And practically every night that he stayed over, I'd run into my mom's bedroom and put on an Oscar-winning performance for Fake Night Terrors. "I can't believe it. I can't believe he's gone," I'd say while screaming, crying at the top of my lungs. But my stepdad wasn't giving up. Instead of just leaving or losing his patience, he'd sit me down to talk. Every single time, we must have had almost 100 conversations where I'd zone out while he tried to get me to open up. But I wasn't budging, because at this point, my dad was texting me almost every hour about how much he missed me. And more importantly, making me promise that I was doing everything I could for him to come back. It wasn't until I forgot to text my dad back for a whole day that I finally opened up, because as punishment, he was ignoring me for a week straight. I told him everything. How my dad had sent me money in exchange to make my stepdad's life hell. How he told me I was a horrible son if I didn't. I even showed him my bruises and injuries. My stepdad's face contorted for a second and he seemed genuinely disgusted. But then his face returned back to normal and he lunged at me for a hug. "You are so strong and so precious. I will do everything I can to protect you," he said. Up until that point, it was the most unconditional love I'd received from a male role model. And within seconds, I had tears running down my face, and I was getting snot all over his t-shirt. "Please, please, please don't tell my dad." Think he promised me that he wouldn't tell my dad, and he wouldn't tell my mom either. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was replaying memories of my dad. Ones that I had always tried to push away. Ones that made him look really bad. Like when he shouted at my mom that she was the W word because she wanted to wear a dress above her knees. Or when I asked him why he wasn't as nice as the other dads at school, and he started throwing things at me. Suddenly, all my fear was replaced with a deep sense of anger. The type of anger that starts growing in your chest and fills your entire body. So I blocked him on everything. I deleted every photo we had together and finally threw out his BS broken heart necklace. I never wanted to see him again. Unfortunately, life isn't that easy. But the first few weeks were bliss. For once, it didn't feel like I was being monitored 24/7. I could do things like talk to friends or smile at strangers without being told I was a shitty, unloyal son. And turns out, my stepdad is actually pretty great. I didn't feel judged while talking to him and he listened without shouting at me to man up. But little did I know, my dad wasn't letting go as easy as I thought he was, and what he did next was something more sinister than I could have ever imagined. And soon, he wouldn't just make our family crumble, but our lives too. Robert, my stepdad, noticed the change right away. He didn't make a big deal out of it, but I caught him smiling at me more. One night, he asked if I wanted to help him make dinner. We made this ridiculous mess trying to make homemade pizza, and I actually had fun. My mom came home and found flour all over the kitchen and both of us laughing. She looked so happy, she almost cried. I started opening up to Robert more, not about everything at once, but little by little. He never pushed, just listened. When I told him about how my dad made me play football even though I hated it, Robert asked what sports I actually liked. I mentioned basketball and the next weekend he took me to a court and we just shot hoops for hours. I was terrible at it, which made it even better somehow. His shots would go wildly off target, sometimes not even hitting the backboard, and we both end up laughing until our sides hurt. "You know," Robert said while we were taking a break, "it's okay to like what you like. You don't have to pretend to be interested in things just because someone else wants you to be. Such a simple thing to say, but it hit me hard. I'd spent so long trying to be what my dad wanted that I barely knew what I actually enjoyed anymore. About 3 weeks after I blocked my dad, I was helping Robert clean out the garage when my mom came running in, looking pale. "Your father just called me," she said, her voice shaking. "He's furious that you've blocked him. He's threatening to take me back to court for alienation." My stomach dropped. I hadn't told my mom about blocking him. I hadn't told her much of anything about what had been going on. Robert gave me a look that said it was my choice what to share. I took a deep breath and told her a simplified version. The dad had been making me spy on them and try to break them up. That I'd gotten tired of it and blocked him. I left out the money and the worst of what he'd said. She didn't need that pain. Mom looked devastated. "Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped." Her eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling as she reached for me. "He said you'd choose Robert over me if you knew," I admitted, and I was scared. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Robert stood awkwardly to the side until Mom reached out and pulled him into our hug too. We stayed like that for a while. This weird little family unit that somehow felt more real than anything I'd experienced with my dad. The next day, my mom called her lawyer. I don't know exactly what they discussed, but she seemed less worried afterward. She assured me I wouldn't have to see my dad if I didn't want to, at least not right away. There might need to be some family counseling eventually, but she would protect me. For about a week, things were calm. I started sleeping better. I even joined the school basketball team, something I'd always wanted to do but never had because it conflicted with the football schedule my dad insisted on. Coach Quinn said I had natural talent, which felt amazing to hear. Then the texts started coming from numbers I didn't recognize. "You can block me but you can't escape me. A real man doesn't hide behind his mother. You're dead to me until you apologize." I showed them to Robert, who looked more concerned than I'd ever seen him. He helped me block each new number but they kept coming. Sometimes there would be days of silence, and I'd think it was over. Then another message would arrive, each one more disturbing than the last. "I know when you leave for school every day." That one really freaked me out. Was he watching the house? I started looking over my shoulder constantly, jumping at shadows. Robert noticed and started driving me to school every day instead of letting me walk. He never said why, but I knew he was worried too. One afternoon, I was at basketball practice when I saw a familiar figure standing at the edge of the gym. My dad, just watching, not approaching, not saying anything, just there. I froze mid-dribble and the ball bounced away. Coach Quinn asked if I was okay, and when I looked back, my dad was gone. I wondered if I'd imagined him. I didn't tell Mom or Robert about seeing him. I didn't want them to worry more than they already were, but I started having trouble sleeping again. Every noise at night made me think he was trying to break in. I checked the locks on my window over and over, the cool metal of the latches becoming familiar under my fingertips in the darkness. About a month after I'd blocked him, I came home from school to find my mom and Robert sitting at the kitchen table, looking serious. My first thought was that something had happened to my dad, and I felt this weird mix of relief and guilt wash over me. "Your father filed for full custody," my mom said without preamble. "He's claiming I've turned you against him and that I'm an unfit mother." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "He can't do that. I'm 15. Don't I get a say?" "You do," Robert said gently. "But it's going to be a process. We'll need to go to court." "I won't go with him," I said, panic rising in my throat. "I'll run away first." My mom reached for my hand. "It won't come to that. I promise, but there's something else." She slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a social media post for my dad. It was a long paragraph about how his ex-wife had poisoned his son against him, how she was mentally unstable, how her new boyfriend was trying to replace him. He tagged a bunch of family members and old friends. The comments were full of people sympathizing with him, calling my mom terrible names. "He's always been good at making himself the victim," my mom said quietly. "I should have warned you this might happen." I felt sick. People I knew, extended family, neighbors, parents of kids I went to elementary school with, they were all reading this, believing him. In his version, I was just a pawn being manipulated by my mom and Robert, not a person with my own thoughts and feelings. The next day at school was awful. Some kids whose parents were friends with my dad were giving me weird looks. One guy, Michael, who I'd known since kindergarten, came up to me at lunch. "My dad says your mom kidnapped you from your real dad," he said, like he was discussing the weather. "That's messed up, man." I wanted to punch him. Instead, I just walked away. My lunch tray clutched so tightly in my hands that my knuckles turned white, but the damage was done. Rumors spread fast in high school. By the end of the day, I'd heard variations ranging from his mom has him brainwashed to his stepdad threatened his real dad with a gun. It was insane. When Robert picked me up, I was practically vibrating with anger. "Everyone's talking about us," I said as soon as I got in the car. Dad's telling people you guys kidnapped me or something. Robert gripped the steering wheel tighter, but kept his voice calm. People love drama. They'll move on to something else soon. But what if they don't? What if the judge believes him? The judge will talk to you, Robert assured me. And unlike your classmates, they're trained to see through manipulation. I wanted to believe him, but I was scared. My dad could be incredibly charming when he wanted to be. He fooled people for years into thinking he was this great family man. What if he fooled the judge too? That weekend, I was helping Robert install some shelves in what had become my permanent bedroom at Mom's house when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer it. Hello? Don't hang up. It was my dad's voice. My hands started shaking so bad I nearly dropped the phone. I just want to talk. I should have hung up. Instead, I said, I have nothing to say to you. Robert had stopped working and was watching me with concern. I put the phone on speaker so he could hear. I miss you, son, my dad said. His voice doing that thing where it gets all soft and sad. Sad. I don't know what they've been telling you about me, but I just want us to be a family again. You threatened to take me away from Mom, I said. You're telling people lies about us. I'm fighting for you because I love you, he said. Your mother is keeping you from me. That teacher she's with isn't your father. I am. I looked at Robert, who mouthed, you don't have to talk to him, but stayed quiet. Robert treats me better than you ever did, I said, surprising myself with my boldness. He doesn't make me pretend to be someone I'm not. There was a pause, and then my dad's voice changed completely. The fake softness vanished, replaced by the cold hard tone I knew all too well. So that's how it is? You're choosing them after everything I've done for you? What have you done except make me afraid all the time? The words just poured out of me. You never cared what I wanted or how I felt. You just wanted me to be your little spy and mini-me. You ungrateful little piece of crap, he hissed. You think your mother and her boyfriend want you around? You're a burden to them. They're just using you to hurt me. Robert took a step forward, looking like he wanted to grab the phone, but I shook my head. I needed to finish this. No, Dad, you're the one who used me, and I'm done. I hung up and blocked the number immediately. My hands were shaking, but I felt stronger than I had in weeks. Robert didn't say anything, just put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. Later that night, I overheard Robert and my mom talking in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried. We need to document everything, Robert was saying. Every threat, every time he shows up uninvited, the judge needs to see the pattern. I'm worried about what he might do, my mom replied. You don't know him like I do. When he feels cornered, he lashes out. We'll be careful, Robert assured her, but we can't let him intimidate us into giving up. I went back to my room feeling both scared and strangely comforted. They were taking this seriously, but they weren't backing down. For the first time in my life, I had adults actually protecting me instead of the other way around. The court date was set for 3 weeks away. In the meantime, my dad escalated his campaign. He started calling my mom's workplace, telling her boss she was mentally unstable. He showed up at my basketball games, just standing there watching until someone asked him to leave. He even contacted some of my teachers, claiming he was concerned about my declining mental health under my mother's care. Most people saw through it, but some didn't. My English teacher, Miss Jessica, pulled me aside one day and asked if everything was okay at home, saying my father had called her with concerns. I was so embarrassed I could barely speak. I just mumbled that my dad was lying and practically ran from the room, my face burning with shame. The worst was when he showed up at our house at midnight pounding on the door and shouting that he wanted to see his son. Robert called the police while my mom and I huddled in the back bedroom. I could hear the raw desperation in my dad's voice through the walls, a sound that was both terrifying and heartbreaking. By the time they arrived, he was gone. The officers took a report, but said there wasn't much they could do since he was my father and hadn't actually threatened anyone. After that night, Robert installed security cameras around the house. He also started sleeping on the couch instead of in Mom's room, saying he wanted to be near the front door just in case. I felt guilty that he was going through all this trouble because of me. It's not because of you, Robert told me when I mentioned it. It's because of your father's choices. Never blame yourself for someone else's bad behavior. The day before our court date, I came home from school to find a package on the porch with my name on it. No return address. I brought it inside cautiously. Don't open that, Robert said immediately. Let me check it first. He carefully opened the box while wearing kitchen gloves. Inside was the broken heart necklace I'd thrown away, along with a note that just said, "Remember your loyalty." The necklace was exactly as I remembered it. Silver chain, jagged broken heart pendant. But seeing it again sent a chill through me that I couldn't shake. Robert called the lawyer right away. That night, I had a full-blown panic attack. I couldn't breathe, couldn't stop shaking. My chest felt like it was being crushed, and my vision kept going dark around the edges. My mom sat with me for hours, just holding me and telling me everything would be okay. Robert made hot chocolate and sat on the floor near my bed, not crowding me but letting me know he was there. Eventually, I fell asleep from pure exhaustion. The next morning, we all got dressed in our nicest clothes and drove to the courthouse. My stomach was in knots. What if the judge made me go with my dad? What if all his lies worked? I'd heard stories about family court disasters where kids were forced to live with abusive parents because the system failed them. In the parking lot, Robert turned to face me from the front seat. Whatever happens in there, I want you to know something. You are the bravest person I've ever met. And no matter what some judge decides, you will always have a home with us. I nearly started crying right there, but managed to hold it together. We walked into the courthouse as a unit, my mom on one side of me and Robert on the other. My dad was already inside with his lawyer. He was wearing a suit I'd never seen before and had gotten a haircut. He looked like the perfect concerned father. When he saw me, he gave me this sad smile that made my skin crawl. I looked away. The hearing wasn't what I expected. It was in a small room, not a big courtroom. The judge was a middle-aged woman named Judge Reese, who had kind eyes, but a no-nonsense expression. She explained that today was just a preliminary hearing to determine temporary arrangements while the full custody case proceeded. My dad's lawyer went first, painting this picture of a heartbroken father whose son had been turned against him by a vindictive ex-wife and her new boyfriend. He talked about my dad's unwavering commitment to family values and how he just wanted a relationship with his only child. My dad nodded solemnly at all the right moments, occasionally dabbing at his eyes like he might cry. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't lived with him, I might have believed it myself. Then our lawyer presented our side. She had documentation of everything. The threatening texts from unknown numbers that matched my dad's speech patterns, police reports from his midnight visit, statements from neighbors who'd seen him watching our house, even screenshots of his social media campaign against my mom. She also had a sealed letter from Robert's school principal vouching for his character and stability. The judge listened carefully to both sides and asked if I would speak with her privately in her chambers. My heart nearly stopped. This was it. My chance to tell the truth, but also the moment I feared most. What if she didn't believe me? Her office was small but comfortable. She had family photos on her desk and a small plant in the window. The sunlight filtering through the blinds cast a pattern of light and shadow across her desk, and I focused on that as I tried to calm my racing heart. So, she said once we were seated, this seems like a difficult situation for everyone. I'd like to hear your perspective. I took a deep breath and told her everything. About the years of walking on eggshells, about the play fighting that left bruises, about how my dad had paid me to sabotage my mom's relationship. I showed her the text he'd sent before I blocked him. I even told her about the broken heart necklace and what it really meant. Not love, but control. And how do you feel about your mother's boyfriend? She asked when I finished. He's what I always thought a dad should be, I said honestly. He listens to me. He doesn't get mad when I like different things than he does. He makes me feel safe. Judge Reese nodded thoughtfully. And if you had a choice, where would you prefer to live? With my mom and Robert, I said without hesitation. I don't want to see my dad at all right now. Maybe someday with a counselor or something, but not alone. I don't feel safe with him. She thanked me for my honesty and we returned to the hearing room. My dad glared at me as I walked past him to sit with my mom. I felt a momentary flash of the old fear, but Robert put his hand on my shoulder, and I remembered I wasn't alone anymore. Judge Reese announced her temporary decision. I would continue living with my mother full-time. My father would have no visitation for now, but could petition for supervised visits after completing a parenting class and anger management program. There would be a temporary restraining order preventing him from coming to our home or my school. My dad exploded. There's no other word for it. He jumped up, face red, shouting that the judge was biased, that this was all a conspiracy against him. His lawyer tried to calm him down, but he shoved the guy away. This is your fault, he yelled, pointing at me. After everything I did for you, you're dead to me. You hear me? Dead. Court officers moved toward him immediately. Judge Reese banged her gavel, ordered him removed from the courtroom. As they escorted him out, still shouting, I sat frozen in my chair. Even though I'd seen this side of him many times, watching him lose control in public was shocking. The mask had finally slipped where others could see it. The judge apologized to us for the outburst and said his behavior would be noted in her final custody determination. Our lawyer looked pleased. My dad had basically proven our case for us with his meltdown. As we left the courthouse, I felt lighter somehow. Like a weight I've been carrying for years had finally been lifted. My dad couldn't hurt us anymore, at least not legally. The restraining order meant he had to stay away. Are you okay? Robert asked as we walked to the car. I thought about it for a moment. Yeah, I said. I think I actually am. That night, we ordered pizza and watched movies together. Just a normal family night. No one mentioned my dad or the court hearing. It was like we all needed a break from the drama, a chance to just be together without fear hanging over us. As I was heading to bed, Robert stopped me in the hallway. "I'm really proud of you," he said. "What you did today took incredible courage." "I was terrified," I admitted. "That's what makes it brave," he said. "Doing something even though you're scared." I nodded, too tired for a deep conversation, but appreciating his words. As I turned to go to my room, he added something else. "By the way, I signed the permission slip for basketball camp this summer. If you still want to go." I'd mentioned the camp months ago, but had assumed it was out of the question with everything going on. The fact that Robert remembered that he was planning for a normal future where I got to do normal kid things hit me hard. "Yeah," I said, my voice a little rough. "I'd like that." I went to bed that night feeling something unfamiliar. Hope. Not just for tomorrow or next week, but for my future. For the first time, I could imagine a life where I wasn't constantly afraid. Where I could just be myself without consequences. Where family meant love and support, not control and fear. I knew it wouldn't be easy. My dad wasn't the type to give up, restraining order or not, and I had years of conditioning to overcome. The anxiety, the people-pleasing, the fear of making mistakes. But for the first time, I believed I could actually heal from my childhood. I had people in my corner now. Real people who loved me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized something else. I couldn't remember the last time I'd checked my phone for messages from my dad. I wasn't waiting for his approval anymore, and that felt like the biggest victory of all. I wish I could say things got easier after the court hearing, but that's not how life works, especially when you're dealing with someone like my dad. The restraining order kept him physically away from us, but he found other ways to make his presence felt. About a week after the hearing, my school counselor called me into her office. Apparently, my dad had been emailing all my teachers claiming I was being brainwashed and needed intervention. The counselor, Miss Barbara, seemed skeptical of his claims, but had to follow up. I ended up telling her a watered-down version of everything. She was actually pretty cool about it and promised to flag my dad's emails as harassment going forward. "Your teachers are here to support you," she told me, "not spy on you for your father." That was a relief. But things got weirder from there. My dad started contacting my friends' parents. James' mom called my mom one night, concerned because my dad had told her I was being abused by Robert. Luckily, she didn't believe him. She'd met Robert at a school function and thought he seemed great, but it was embarrassing knowing my dad was spreading these stories around. I tried to focus on basketball and school, but it was hard. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, my heart would race thinking it might somehow be him. Robert noticed and suggested I change my ringtone and notification sounds. Such a simple thing, but it actually helped break that automatic fear response. One night about a month after the court hearing, I woke up around 2 a.m. needing to pee. As I walked past the living room, I noticed Robert was still up, sitting in the dark with just his laptop screen illuminating his face. He didn't see me, and I was about to continue to the bathroom when I heard him talking quietly on the phone. "I understand your concerns," he was saying, "but he's been through enough. The last thing he needs is more conflict." I froze, realizing he was talking about me. "No, I don't think that's a good idea," Robert continued. "Let's give him some time. He'll reach out when he's ready." I backed away quietly and returned to my room, forgetting about the bathroom entirely. Who was he talking to? It couldn't be my dad. Robert would never go behind my back like that, but it was definitely about me. The next morning at breakfast, Robert looked tired but normal. He didn't mention any late-night calls, and I didn't ask. Part of me was afraid to know. A few days later, I came home from basketball practice to find an unfamiliar car in our driveway. My first thought was that my dad had somehow gotten around the restraining order, and I nearly turned around and ran. But then the front door opened, and Robert stepped out with a woman I'd never seen before. "Hey," he called when he saw me hesitating. "Come meet someone." I approached cautiously. The woman was maybe in her 50s with graying hair and my dad's eyes. With a shock, I realized who she must be. "This is Karen," Robert said. "Your grandmother." My dad's mother. I'd met her exactly twice in my life. Once when I was too young to remember, and once at a family funeral when I was 7. My dad had always said she was too busy to visit, but I'd overheard enough arguments to know they didn't get along. "Hello," she said, looking nervous. "You've grown so much." I just stood there, not sure what to say. What was she doing here? How had she even found us? Robert sensed my confusion. "Karen reached out to your mom last week. She's been trying to contact you for years, but your dad, he told me you didn't want to see me." Karen finished. "That you weren't interested in knowing his side of the family." Another lie. I wasn't even surprised anymore. "Why now?" I asked. "I saw the court records." She said, "I've been worried about your father's behavior for a long time. When I read what happened," she trailed off looking pained. "We went inside, and my mom joined us in the living room. It was awkward at first. Karen kept looking at me like she was trying to memorize my face. I learned that she'd been trying to be part of my life since I was little, but my dad had systematically blocked her attempts. He told her I was too busy with sports visit, or that I had specifically said I didn't want to see her. I should have tried harder, she said, wiping away tears. I knew how your father could be. I lived with it myself. That caught my attention. What do you mean? She exchanged glances with my mom, who nodded slightly. Your father's behavior, the control, the manipulation, the anger. He learned it from his father, Karen explained. My husband was not a kind man. I left when your father was 15, much like you are now. So dad was like me? The thought was disturbing. In some ways, she said carefully, but he made different choices as he grew up. I tried to get him help, but he refused. He became more like his father every year. We talked for hours. Karen had brought old photos of my dad as a kid. Smiling, normal-looking photos that seemed to show a different person than the man I knew. She told me stories about him that didn't fit with the image I had. How he'd once rescued a stray cat. How he'd been afraid of thunderstorms until he was 12. It was confusing. The dad in her stories sounded like someone I might have actually liked. What had happened to turn him into the monster I knew? Before she left, Karen gave me her phone number. No pressure, she said, but I'd like to be in your life, if you'll let me. I didn't commit to anything, but I saved her number. Robert had been quiet during most of the visit, just making sure everyone had drinks and snacks. As Karen was leaving, I overheard her thank him. For what? He asked. For the call, she said. For thinking he might need more family in his corner. So that's who Robert had been talking to that night. He'd reached out to my grandmother, thinking I might benefit from knowing my dad's side of the family. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Part of me appreciated the thought, but another part felt weird that he'd done it without talking to me first. Later that night, I confronted him about it. You called my grandmother? Robert looked surprised, then guilty. I did. I should have discussed it with you first. Yeah, you should have, I said, feeling my anger rise. You promised not to go behind my back. You're right, he said simply. I broke your trust, and I'm sorry. His immediate apology deflated my anger a bit. He explained that he'd found Karen's information while gathering evidence for our case and had reached out thinking it might help me to know I had family beyond my dad who cared about me. But he acknowledged that he should have talked to me first. I messed up, he said. It won't happen again. The fact that he admitted his mistake instead of getting defensive like my dad would have made it hard to stay mad. I told him I needed time to process everything, and he respected that. Over the next few weeks, I texted with Karen occasionally. Nothing deep, just getting to know each other. She never pushed for more than I was comfortable with, which I appreciated. She sent me a few more old photos and told me stories about my dad's childhood that helped me understand him a little better. Not enough to forgive him, but enough to see him as a person who'd been damaged rather than just a monster. Meanwhile, my dad had been suspiciously quiet. No more calls to the school. No more contacting my friends' parents. Our lawyer said he'd completed the court-mandated parenting classes and anger management program in record time and was petitioning for supervised visitation. The thought of seeing him again made my stomach hurt. I talked to my therapist about it. Yeah. I had a therapist now. Robert had found one who specialized in family trauma, and I've been seeing her weekly. Dr. Taylor was pretty cool, not at all what I expected a therapist to be like. She didn't make me talk about my feelings if I didn't want to. Sometimes we just played basketball in her office with this mini hoop she had on her door. You don't have to see him if you're not ready, Dr. Taylor told me when I brought up the visitation request. The court will take your wishes into account. But what if I'm never ready? I asked. What if I never want to see him again? That's a valid choice too, she said. But I think what you're really asking is whether you should give him another chance. She was right. Part of me was curious about whether he'd actually changed. The stories from Karen had complicated my feelings about him, but the fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface. Here's what I suggest, Dr. Taylor said. Write him a letter, not to send, just for yourself. Put down everything you want to say to him, good and bad. It might help clarify your feelings. I tried it that night. I started writing and couldn't stop. Page after page of anger, hurt, confusion, and even some good memories that I'd almost forgotten. By the time I finished, it was past midnight and I had 10 pages of messy handwriting. Reading it over, I realized something important. I wasn't ready to see him yet. I didn't want to cut him out of my life forever either. I wanted the chance to have a real father someday. If he could actually change. I decided to agree to supervised visitation, but with conditions. It would be in Dr. Taylor's office, not the usual visitation center. And Robert would be allowed to wait in the outer office in case I needed to leave. The day of the visit arrived faster than I expected. I barely slept the night before and felt sick to my stomach all morning. Robert drove me to Dr. Taylor's office, giving me a pep talk the whole way. "Remember, you can leave anytime," he said. "You're in control here." My dad was already in Dr. Taylor's office when we arrived. He looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. He stood up when I walked in, then seemed unsure what to do. No hug, no handshake, just an awkward nod. Dr. Taylor explained the ground rules. No raising voices, no physical contact unless I initiated it, no discussing the court case. My dad agreed to everything without argument, which was new. The first 10 minutes were excruciating. We made painful small talk about the weather and my basketball team. Then there was a long silence that no one seemed willing to break. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said. "Like a real one, not just the court-mandated stuff." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. "He's helping me understand some things about myself," my dad continued. "About why I act the way I do. It's not an excuse." But he trailed off, looking at his hands. "I'm trying to be better." "You've said that before," I pointed out, "after you and Mom split up." "I know. I wasn't really trying then. I was just saying what I thought would get you on my side." His honesty surprised me. "This time is different. I'm doing it for me, not to convince anyone else." We talked for the full hour. It wasn't some magical reconciliation. There were awkward silences and moments where I could see his old anger flaring up before he controlled it. But it was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Near the end, he mentioned seeing Karen. "Your grandmother told me she visited you," he said. "I was angry at first, but my therapist helped me see that was selfish. You deserve to know your family." When our time was up, he didn't try to hug me or make plans for another visit. He just said he hoped I'd be willing to meet again sometime, but that he'd understand if I wasn't ready. I walked out to the waiting room where Robert was reading a magazine. He looked up anxiously, clearly trying to read my expression. "It was okay," I said. "Not great, not terrible, just okay." He seemed relieved. "Okay is a good start." Over the next few months, I met with my dad every other week. Each time got a little less awkward. He was different. Still my dad, with all the personality traits I recognized, but the explosive anger seemed contained. He listened more than he talked, which was definitely new. I learned things about him I'd never known. How he'd struggled in school with what would now be diagnosed as ADHD. How his own father had been physically abusive in ways that made my childhood look easy by comparison. How he'd promised himself he'd never hit his kids and had kept that promise but channeled his anger in other damaging ways. Understanding him better didn't erase what he'd done, but it helped me see him as a flawed human rather than a monster. And seeing him work on himself gave me hope that maybe someday we could have some kind of relationship. Meanwhile, life at home settled into a new normal. Robert officially moved in and we had a small celebration with just the three of us plus Karen. My basketball team made it to the state semifinals and everyone came to watch, even my dad, though he sat on the opposite side of the gym for my mom and Robert. One night about 6 months after the court hearing, Robert knocked on my bedroom door. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. "Can we talk for a minute?" he asked. I put down my phone. "Sure. What's up?" He sat on the edge of my bed, fidgeting with something in his pocket. "I wanted to run something by you before I talk to your mom." My first thought was that he was moving out, and I felt a surge of panic. But then he pulled out a small box, and I realized what was happening. "I'm thinking of asking your mom to marry me," he said, "but I wanted to make sure you're okay with it first." I stared at the ring in the box. Nothing flashy. Just a simple band with a small diamond. It looked exactly like something my mom would like. "You're asking my permission?" I said, surprised. "Not permission exactly," he clarified. "More like, I want us to be a family, all three of us. If you're not ready for that, I can wait." I thought about how different this was from my dad's approach to everything. Robert wasn't telling me what was going to happen or manipulating me into accepting his decision. He was actually considering my feelings as equal to his own. "I think you should ask her," I said. "She'll say yes." His face lit up. "You think so?" "I know so," I said confidently. "She looks at you like you're her favorite person in the world." He proposed the next weekend during a picnic at the park. I helped set it up, keeping Mom distracted while Robert arranged everything. When she said yes, they both looked over at me and Robert waved me over to join their hug. It wasn't weird or forced. It just felt right. That night, I found the broken heart necklace my dad had sent back to me. I'd kept it in my desk drawer, not wanting to throw it away again, but not wanting to see it either. I took it out and looked at it for a long time, thinking about everything it represented. The manipulation, the control, the twisted idea of loyalty my dad had tried to instill in me. Then I put it in an envelope along with a short note. "I'm keeping this as a reminder of where we've been but not where we're going. Your son." I mailed it to my dad the next day. He never mentioned receiving it, but at our next meeting something was different. He seemed more at peace. Less like he was trying to win me back and more like he was just trying to know me. It's been a year now since that first court hearing. Things aren't perfect. They never are in real life. My dad and I still have awkward moments, and I doubt he'll ever be the father I wanted as a kid. But we're building something new, something based on who we actually are rather than who he wanted us to be. Robert and my mom got married in a small ceremony last month. I was the best man. My dad was invited but chose not to come, which was probably for the best. Karen came though and brought old family photos for memory table. Some of my basketball teammates were there too, along with Robert's family who have all been amazingly welcoming to me. Yesterday, Robert asked if I'd be okay with him legally adopting me, not to replace my dad, he explained, but to make official what we already feel, that we're family. I'm thinking about it. Part of me loves the idea, but another part worries about how my dad will take it. Dr. Taylor says that's normal. Balancing my needs against others' feelings is part of growing up. I don't know what I'll decide about the adoption or what the future holds with my dad, but for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of making the wrong choice. I know that my worth isn't tied to pleasing someone else, that real family supports you no matter what, and that loyalty should be earned, not demanded. And that broken heart necklace? I don't need it anymore to remind me who I am or where I belong. I found my real home.